What happens when the world expects autistic people to connect in ways that were never designed for them? Today, we explore the creation of an app built to help autistic people find meaningful connection, develop relationships, and feel understood without having to hide who they are. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage and let's learn more about my next guest. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. Today, I'm joined with Trista. Welcome to the show, Trista.
Thank you for having me.
So, before we talk about the app, take me back to the person you were before autism became a part of your professional world. What first pulled you towards this work?
Okay. So when I was about 19 years old, um, kind of a silly story, but my boyfriend at the time had a mom who worked with people that were developmentally disabled. And she worked as a residential ca caregiver. And as a residential caregiver, basically, it was like a level three home that you required someone to stay with you, but you still were responsible to, do basic tasks. Basically the residential caregiver that was there to kind of monitor some of the things that you did and so on. So that's I she needed someone to help her out, and I was the weekend staff. So there I am, 19 years old, taking them to different events, sometimes taking them to the movies, sometimes getting their nails done, different things like that. It was a home that consisted of three other women. And I would make them, breakfast, lunch, dinner during the weekend, and then just really do activities with them. Um, and so that's really how I got started. After that, I decided, I'm going to go ahead and, continue with school. I did a couple of different jobs outside of that setting. I worked with people um, that were a little bit they, well, not a little bit, they needed additional support as far as resources go. So I worked for a while as a medical manager, helping people get set up with Medi-Cal. And I did that for a while. It's normally with people that were undocumented. Um, and they needed health care. And then after that, I did a short while working with Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services were similar to, what um, it's basically like the behavior of people and trying to get them to, basically be a little bit more um, cognizant of their own behavior and to try to do things to try to change that.
Mhm.
Um, so I did that for a while and I continued. I got my master's in industrial organizational psychology. Um, but I still came back to, when I was happiest with my professions, I was happiest when I was a residential caregiver working with this type of population. So I decided to go back to school and I got because I already had a master's, so I just did the remaining classes to get my BCBA. And I got that from Cal State San Marcos.
Now, what did you think the work would be when you first began?
Uh, when I first began, I think that sometimes you think, especially coming out of school and all the coursework, it's very different than what it is, day to day, everything. Um, I think at first you kind of think, coming out of school, I know everything. I know everything about everything. Oh, it's very cut and dry. Behavior happens in a vacuum. This is the way things are. And it's not. There's a lot of gray areas to that, especially when you're working with people and their unique needs. Um, So that's really, there's a lot of controversy sometimes, and regarding ABA and different things like that. And if I'm going to acknowledge it because that's kind of there is controversy with that, but there's controversy with everything and every profession, and it kind of is like, what is your main goals? My goals have always been to make notable changes in the individual that I serve.
Mhm.
And I think that that has really been the driving force. Seeing someone that maybe didn't possess so many skills, but constantly working on different things, you're able to make some changes. And that's where I really, fell in love with the job that I do.
Was there a person or a moment that changed how you understood autism?
Um, yeah, the gentleman that it's a big reason why I made the app. I meant he I have serviced him since he was in second grade, and now he's going to be 20 years old. And you know, if you meet one person with autism spectrum disorder, you're just meeting one person with autism spectrum
Hmm.
disorder. Everybody is unique, and everybody, has different things that really, just like anyone, regardless of a diagnosis or not, we all have different things that maybe, like maybe we require a little bit more support in, or maybe we need a little bit more, support in, but that's every single person in this world. Like there's no one, I need support in several areas that I can mention that I could think of, Um, I'm sorry if I'm trailing off,
No, not a
but
problem.
um, I think for him, he's been my inspiration for a lot of things because he has so many good skills, but he still needs a little bit of assistance and me trying to explain to him, you know, um, what this means because there's a misconception that if you have ASD, that encompasses having intellectual disability, and it's completely false. It's two different diagnoses. And I think that the average person thinks, okay, this person has autism spectrum disorder. They also are intellectually disabled, and that's not the case. Not the case at all. Well, for that particular client, he has mild ID, but there's a millions of people that have mild ID. That's not, I want to show him, and I've tried to work to show him, like, okay, so it takes you a couple more times to get something, but it doesn't mean that you can't get it. You still are able to get it. You're still able to do these things. Um, and just pushing him more towards like, okay, what does independence look like for you? What is your life going to look like in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years? But the same way that you would do with any other person. It's not different.
When did this stop feeling like simply a career and start feeling more personal to you?
Um, The majority of people that I work with are children.
Hmm.
Well, actually, not now. In the beginning, the majority of the people that I worked with were children. And I think that sometimes when a parent is told like your child has autism spectrum disorder, the doctor kind of says your child has ASD and doesn't really explain everything there really is to that. I think for me, what's personal is how much progress that I can get from an individual, regardless of whatever it is. Like, um, and I think that that is really it's a difficult job sometimes because changing behavior is a difficult job, and even in ourselves, tracking our own behavior and doing things, all of that is difficult. But I think that really what I love is the fact that there can be changes. There can be changes. If there's something you really want to work at, you can have it, whatever it is, whatever it is. So I think that that's kind of like where it became more of a passion of mine, and why I decided to continue to do it is because I really do believe that if there's something that we work on, we can change it if we want to, of course.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
as a BCBA, you are trained to observe behavior, but
Uh-huh.
autistic people are often misunderstood when others only look at where what can be seen. How did you learn to look beneath the behavior?
I think that yes, our training is observe, collect data, different things like that. But it's really when I go in to come help someone, yes, it's about the individual, but it's about the environment. I'm not changing necessarily the behavior in the individual. I'm changing everything in the environment and how people around them have responded, which was required them to respond a certain way, right? And so I think that that is the hardest buy-in from parents because sometimes parents are like, "Hey, I thought that you're working with my kid, but it's not them. I'm not, yes, I'm working with the kid, but it's more about no, how can we do these things differently that ultimately make impact in your child?" So I think that that is the misconception, even about ABA in general, that we're there, we're just working on the kid. No, it really is the whole environment. What
Hmm.
environmental changes can I change that are going to be ultimately make changes in the individual? Um, and I think that my training has really taught me. So there's radical behaviorism that believes that everything's just pure, observable, measurable. If I don't see it, then it didn't happen. Yes, there is foundation in that. However, there's internal thoughts. Everybody has internal thoughts and internal that are behavior in itself. So me thinking about something, whatever it is that I'm thinking about, that is a behavior. It's just happening internally and you can't see that. So I think that what really changed for me is that diagnosis or not, we all have same desires. We all have, we all are human and we all have, our driving forces. And so that is the same for every individual that I serve. Same thing. Same, the way that I think about myself, I love my job, but I wouldn't do it if I wasn't getting paid. Same thing. Like if same thing about everyone. Like everybody and everybody's reinforcer is different. So the challenge is trying to look at the individual and find out what is going to work for them. What do they deem as valuable to them? And that's half the battle is trying to figure out what is valuable to them. Once I know what's valuable to them, then working and building off of that.
Now, what can behavior communicate when someone does not have the words to explain what they are feeling?
Um, Often when someone engages in, let's just say, hitting, let's just call it aggression, hitting, doing anything towards another person, a lot of the times it's because they don't have a way to communicate. So those behaviors are that's exactly what it is. It's a form of communication. So it's a communication, not, with every, person, I'm gonna get out trying to tell you how I feel. If I have no verbal capacity, then I'm gonna do other behaviors to make you know, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Um, Teaching them alternative forms of communication, whether that be, a picture exchange communication system, or whether that be an AAC device, um, other ways to gain access to what they want versus using aggression or anything like that in order to get that.
Have autistic people ever challenged something you were originally taught?
Yeah. hmm I think that when you get a child that is a child, has ASD, and as they get older, I think that there's not enough emphasis on the fact that they go through puberty and they go through body changes just like every single other person. And I think that that is what's been difficult for me to sometimes share with parents because they want to see their child is a child always, like I do too. Everyone wants to see their children is not growing up. And I think that sometimes they are fixated on the fact that my child has this diagnosis. They're not going to have all these other feelings, but they do. They do. And I think that that is really, they don't teach you that in school. I think that it's just, they don't teach you that in school. And that is something you have to be able to focus on, the fact that these children become adults.
How has your approach changed throughout your career?
I don't know everything. That has been the biggest thing. I don't know everything. And my lane is my lane. I think sometimes we want to change everything. And we think that sometimes, I'll speak for myself, not we, because I don't want to do that. Um, Maybe first coming out of school, I thought I can tackle everything. I don't know everything. I don't know everything, so I can't tackle everything. So, like, for example, I've had people that have ARFID. And to be honest with you, that eating disorder, I do not feel equipped to be able to work with that. So I will say like, yeah, I can work on some behavioral principles and we're going to do a self-management and different things like that. And I can work along that, but I also need you to work on the root cause and what's going on there. So I'm going to go ahead and refer you out and highly, highly, highly suggest that you speak to someone that just, and not just a regular mental health counselor, a mental health counselor that focuses strictly on eating disorders. So I think that's the biggest thing that's changed with me for me is that I don't know everything.
All right. Now, take me back to the moment when you realized autistic people needed a different way to find and connect with somebody.
I'll go back to the client that I've served forever. Um, he was doing different things like and this is in a school setting. He's going to adult school and he was doing things like giving Perez, $200 gift cards to the Apple Store. And I'm
Oh,
At first, when I found out, and he didn't tell, he knew that I was going to be like, "What are you doing?" Because I helped him set up with all the services and stuff like that. And he told the one-on-one working with him, yeah, separate from the school setting, that he did that. And I asked him, "Do you have a crush on her?" And he got very embarrassed. He's like, "I can't. She's married." I said, "I didn't ask all those other questions. I asked, do you have a crush on her?" And he kind of like, got quiet. And I was like, that's not the way that you express yourself. Like, that's not as the way. Yeah. So, there's that. There's been several instances that happened with him. Another instance that I've been working with him since before he turned 18 is when you turn 18, there's very clear you don't talk to anyone that's underage. Like, you have to start looking to different things like that. It had to be very black and white. He is very good with rules, but it had to be very black and white. This is what it is. This is what we can do. But that's honestly, that would be the same with anyone else. But I noticed with him, it was very hard for him to connect with people. He was either meeting people that cognitively were a lot lower than him,
mm.
or he was meeting people that were taking advantage of the fact that he's never been in a relationship and never explored any type of romantic. And they would tell him things like, "Oh, it's okay, I can find someone for you," or, "It's okay, maybe I feel like this way too," and different things like that. This is the reason why about a year and a half ago, I'm like, you know what, there has to be something different. There has to be something different. But I wanted a way. I don't know how it's gonna do if it scales really big. I'll figure it out. But I wanted something to actually verify, like, yes, you do have a diagnosis. I'm not gonna keep that paperwork, but I want something to show like you truly do have a diagnosis of ASD so that you're on somewhat of a playing same level playing field. So that's why I decided.
That reminds me of a story. Several years back when I first started, I had a woman or a girl come on and she wanted to talk to me about her sister who's autistic.
Hmm.
And she told me this story about how her sister was nannying for this guy and fell in love with him, traveled across the world to meet him and all this. Didn't tell her family,
Oh my gosh.
told her best friends. Her friends told their family. Her family called her and told her to get back home. She came back home. She disowned her friends. And she's like, what? She's like, what do I tell my sister? I'm like, you got to explain it to her in a way they understand, that her mind can understand. And I said, you need to explain to her that like your friends are doing the right, we're doing the right. They were in the right. They were protecting her. By dumping them is hurting them because they were protecting you by telling your parents. They didn't go behind your back. They did it to protect you from being hurt by this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being very matter of fact. They'll understand, like they will, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, I had this one friend I met through Facebook groups, and he's got this girl that they're both on the same level. They're both autistic, but neither of them work. And you're like, oh, I'm in love, I'm in love. I'm like, yeah, but you're not really in a relationship. Yeah, you guys may hang out and do stuff, but you can't support her, number one. You don't have a job. You don't do things together. That's not a relationship. That's a friendship. He's like,
Yeah.
don't tell me you're rude. I mean, and then he like literally blocked me on everything. I'm like, dude, that is not a friendship. That is not a relationship. That's a friendship. If you were taking her out and doing things and not having your mother drive you all the way out to where she is to do things. I know you guys grew up together, but you have no money to support her. You can't have a relationship if you have no money.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll realize later in life that if you want to be in a relationship, girls are going to expect a certain amount from you.
Yeah. I think that's valid. Yeah.
Now, why did the existing apps or services not feel good enough?
So again, I go back to him.
Hmm.
He would get people that would say, "Oh, I think that I'm on the spectrum," or
Yeah.
and would say things like that. And I feel like within the last years, I feel like I don't want to say that it's trendy to say that I'm on the spectrum or something, but I feel like yes, I believe it. I totally believe it. I totally advocate for, getting the diagnosed and so on. But I sometimes feel like people will sometimes use that um as an excuse. And I sometimes feel like, like, okay, but that's not where it is. And I felt like he also, because I've been talking to him about this and I've been talking to him like, you need to find someone like you. Like, there's differences, but a little bit, like you make sure that you don't get taken advantage of and so on. And so he starts sharing with other people, what his diagnosis is, which is completely okay, completely whatever he feels comfortable with. But I felt like people were using it to try to manipulate him. And that's the thing now is that you can say you identify as being on the spectrum. So that was part of it too. And then with the app that I have now, again, God willing, it will scale fast, but I also have the social skills component, not to fix someone, but if someone says, hey, what do you suggest me doing this? When this happens, what should we do? Different stuff that I teach anyone, like anyone that says like, hey, how do I keep the conversation going? Or what focus points can I do? Different stuff like that. I have that optional social skills component that someone can go ahead and schedule an appointment with me, similar to where you would with when a telehealth appointment with a provider because, you think that you have a sinus infection or something like that. Kind of very similar. Schedule an appointment with me and, we can talk about whatever it is the person wants to talk about. So that is a difference too.
Now, autistic people are often told they need better social skills, but sometimes the real problem is that the spaces around them were never designed for them. What
Mhm.
what were you seeing?
I think that there's validity in that too. I think that if you want to talk about um that you love Pokemon cards, I think that what we should do is we should find someone else that also has similar interest. So I don't necessarily now if you're like, I'm tired of meeting people or friends that just want to talk about Pokemon cards, I want to expand my interests, then I would work with you. Okay, well, what's something else that we could work on? If you see that they continue to come back to Pokemon cards, like let's bring up something else that you want to talk about. So I think that all of us can, brush up on our social skills or different things like that. But it's more geared about what do you feel that you need assistance with versus me telling you, hey,
Mhm.
you need to work on this. When you're an adult, it's more about, okay, what do you want to work on? And that does take a level of self-reflection and being able to say like, okay, like I feel like maybe I can be a little bit better doing this. And
Mhm.
then that's where I would gear it, wherever it is that the person really feels that they feel that they want to improve in.
Now, how much of autistic loneliness comes from isolation and how much comes from repeated misunderstanding?
You know what? I think so frequently we're taught that um the person that's autistic wants self-isolates, which yes, that does happen, but that
Mm.
happens with someone that's not autistic too, but maybe a little bit more. But I do feel that a lot of it is that um, they feel like they're being misunderstood. So rather than the rejection of constantly feeling like they're being misunderstood, they're like, you know what? I'm good. I'll do this by myself. So I think that finding ways to connect and asking them what's something that you feel like you would want. And then there's another misconception, like because you're autistic doesn't mean you have to be a social butterfly. There's people that are not autistic that are not social butterflies. But as long as you have a few people to connect with and to bounce ideas back on, because as humans, we are social creatures. So being able to do that with a few people, not be a social butterfly, but just a few people that you can trust. That is the main thing. The few people that you can trust.
Now, can someone be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that if they feel that they are still trying to conform to what they think other people want them to be, I think that can be very isolating. Very isolating. Yeah.
Now, what does genuine connection look like compared to simply being included?
I think a genuine connection believe it goes back to how much do you trust that person? Do you trust that person? Can you share things with them that, can you laugh with them? Can you have little inside jokes with them? Do they get you? When do they understand? This is difficult for any relationship though, like knowing when to give person space and when not to give a person space. But I think that's the difference between, I'm gonna have this person in the background, I'm including them, versus I'm gonna ask this person like, hey, what's something you want? It's different.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the app for a minute.
Okay.
When you began building the app, what did you want the experience to feel like for the person using it?
Let me preface it by saying I'm definitely not an app builder. I hired someone because I was Googling, 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 right? So I
Mhm.
found a company and I'm like, I have this idea and I have this app. This app got denied from Apple Store 15 times. Legit, 15 times. And it was because the market is saturated. The market's saturated with things out there that are kind of similar. There's Bumble, there's all these different things. And what ended up happening was is that I had to go in there because the place that I was going through was not conveying my original thought. And my original thought was to have a place for people that are on the spectrum with a verified diagnosis with a social optional social skills component. So I think I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought. The whole thing was to be different than what's out there. The major differences are the fact that you have someone right now that's me, that's a BCBA that you can bounce ideas off of. And the second part was is that there you do have to upload documentation that shows, hey, you know what, I have some type of verified diagnosis, which is different than what's out there.
Mm.
Yeah.
What did you deliberately avoid because it could create pressure or overwhelm?
Um, in there, it's not necessarily just for dating. It could be just meeting people that are on the same playing field. So you have several questions like, do you work, volunteer, or do you go to school? What is a non-negotiable for you? What is something that you'd want someone to know about you? What's something that you don't like to talk about? Do you have any type of like, sensory civil things that set you off sensory wise? Is there something you don't want to talk about? Do you have children? Do you want children ever? Do you like children? Different things like that, kind of similar to what's out there, but I think the whole asking someone like what's a non-negotiable, and what's a something sensory that you like or it's something that you don't like. Things like that.
How did you consider communication differences, sensory needs, and anxiety?
Um, some of those questions are on there as far as like the whole sensory thing. And what is something that you don't want to talk about? So if you're going through someone's profile and it's like, oh, they don't like to talk about, you know, cats, and I love cats, then it's probably not gonna, even though maybe I like the way that they look, but it's probably not something that I'm gonna want to, do. Probably try to message them. But also too, having access to someone's like differences than you, and you deciding like this is something that's a non-negotiable, or this is something that, I can deal with. It's okay to have differences, and so on.
Now, did autistic people help guide the development process at all?
Um, just my one client that I would ask him questions like, what is this something that you really want? What's something that I think that eventually as it scales, that's something I would want. I would want someone to tell me like, hey, I like this or I don't like this, or let's think about, maybe let's do a newsletter, maybe, let's do something else. I would want that as we scale. I would, because I think that it's definitely important. If I'm going to do something for a particular, community, people with on the spectrum, I should and I want to continuously get their input. So it's valuable. It's valuable.
What feedback changed the direction of the app?
What feedback changed the direction of the app? It's so new. I really haven't had much change yet. I think that my biggest hurdle that I've had so far is is getting it out there to people that say I want something like this, but yet, like, I'll give you an example. I've been looking on so many like different marketplaces like Facebook and stuff like that. And there's people that will say on there, like, I'm over this. Like, I want something, I want to meet someone. Because it's a misconception too that sometimes people that are on the spectrum don't want to meet anyone. Like, I think that's kind of like what we're told in what's kind of like mainstream, like the fact that they like to isolate, they like to be by themselves, they don't want to meet anyone. That's not necessarily true. Maybe there are people that are, but there's people without the diagnosis that don't want to meet anyone. So I think that my biggest hurdle is really getting enough people to be in a same space. And the biggest hurdle that I have had definitely has been contacting other agencies and telling them like, hey, I have something that's out like for your clients. Like sometimes they just ghost me where they don't respond to me, or sometimes they'll say things like, for example, I'm not going to name who, but one of the regional centers I contacted and I was like, hey, you know what? I have something for your clients and so on. It comes along with independence. It comes along with, meeting friends and doing things like that. It's a natural progression of for us as humans. Like this is part of it, like just offer it as a resource. And their response to me was one word, or one sentence, we don't do dating apps. And I'm like, it's so much more than that, but okay. So I think that has been my biggest hurdle, trying to figure out how am I going to get this out there? How am I going to show value? I think for me, I think that whatever you do in life, in order for it to be successful, you have to be passionate about it. And that's what I have going on my side, is the fact that I am really passionate about something. I think that it will work for people. I think that it will work for people. And I started thinking like, one thing also, this is later on the line, what my aspirations for the app, hopefully, is that I would want to offer um even, an optional feature where that can be insurance backed, where like counseling.
Hmm.
My biggest pet peeve, my biggest pet peeve as being a board certified behavior analyst is when I have someone come to me and the counselor will cut them off and tell them, oh, you need ABA. But this client has years of trauma that I'm not going to address in ABA because that's not my role, right? And so it's so frustrating for me because it's like you think that this person that has autism, they can't couldn't have been exposed to trauma. Like, yes, I can work on the behaviors and do things like that, but I'm not going to address the years of trauma that they've had. So that is my frustration. And I think that I would want to offer that eventually on where I can have a counselor that really truly does understand the population and be able to like, okay, like let's talk about this again. Yes, I know you've said this a bunch of times, but let's reel in, let's talk about this and be patient enough to work with that individual to open up and be able to tell you this is what I'm feeling. Not just, very level because I think that that is something that I've ran into time and time and time again is that counselors don't understand, similar to all teachers, similar to they don't understand that they're gonna get it. You got to explain it a little bit different. You just got to have a little bit more patience and they're gonna get it.
Now, when we say the app helps someone find someone, what does that really mean? Is it about dating, friendship, companionship, support, or just something wider?
I think all of it. I think you have friendship. You don't have to, you can meet someone on there and you guys don't connect romantically, but you love talking to them about, something that you guys found a common interest. You guys love talking about that. So now you met someone that you can talk to and develop a friendship with, right? I think that maybe you start off at someone and you start talking to them just like the way any other dating apps or way you meet someone traditionally. You start talking to them and you're like, oh, this is a cool friend. And you start to develop feelings for them and like, hey, I actually kind of really like hanging out with them. Maybe we can hang out more. I think that me offering the social skills component, if someone wants it, like, hey, because it's not necessary. It's not every single person. You could be on the app and never touch me. Like you could be on the app and never, schedule an appointment with me. That's fine. It's all about giving that person the choice to be able to have that as additional support. So I think that uh, the guide and being available, that's also something that can, someone can use. And then I just think knowing I'm on this app, someone also has this diagnosis, I'm not gonna have to over explain myself. I'm not gonna have to explain myself like when I go a little bit quiet or when I'm like, you know what, I'm all can I have a bit of time? Because I just feel like I I just need a space. Um, and so I think that that's a way. And I don't think I know that's the way that the app can assist with all of those things.
Do autistic users tend to be looking for something different from people using traditional connection apps?
I think in general, you don't have to disclose, hey, I'm autistic. You don't have to write it on your head. You don't have to do anything like that. I think that sometimes when you do decide to disclose I'm autistic, um, maybe it's met with, oh, that's funny. You don't look autistic. Or and with something like an app where you know that everybody's kind of has facing the same challenges, you don't have to worry about someone saying something like that. Because again, I'll go back to the same gentleman that I talk about almost this whole time. When I initially was helping him apply for services with the regional center, he was initially denied. And he was denied because he presents very well.
Hmm.
And I had to go and write a letter for him to the psychologist. It was like, I understand that he presents well, but it's, all these deficits that he has, he really is going to need the support from, the financial support and support later on if he chooses to utilize it. So I think that that kind of is the same thing. It's encompassed. Like sometimes the support that someone needs is not evident right away. And I think having an app that you know that this person has faced some of the maybe some of the things that you have before, it just makes it better. I mean, similar to different apps that are out there. There's, Christian Mingle or Farmers, it's a community where all of you guys kind
Mhm.
of are the same have the same experiences. So that's why.
Can it help someone find a person who understands them without expecting them to mask?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because I think that that is the whole point is that everyone everyone is in the same area and you know that this person has a they could be more of themselves because they're all everyone on here has faced similar challenges and maybe a challenge to read is not the same challenge to me and we can discuss it but it's still the same thing. We still come from the same area and from the same type of misconceptions that people have had about us.
Okay. Autistic people can sometimes be more vulnerable to manipulation, rejection, or unhealthy relationships. How did you think about safety when creating the app?
That was the thing that I wanted just an area for everyone to have around the same diagnosis and for me to verify that, hey, this person truly does have a diagnosis because that was the thing that I was seeing time and time again. And he's not the only client that I would need to look up the statistics, but really when you have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, you have higher likelihood of being abused sexually. And there's a lot of statistics when it comes to they are truly our vulnerable population because sometimes they're a little bit more trusting, you know?
Mhm.
And so that was my whole thing is that I can't practice, I can't, you know, 100% say everybody on the site is going to be, where you don't have to have any safety concerns because I think that you have to have safety concerns walking outside your house. But one thing I can promise is that
Mhm.
everyone has been looked at similar to like yes you do have this diagnosis so that you still have to use judgment you still have to make sure and it says that on the app in our terms and conditions like make sure that you're getting to know someone similar to the way you would anyone if I meet someone at the grocery store I probably am gonna go to coffee with them a few times get to know them before I'm like hey let's come watch a movie at my house same practicing safety always.
How do you protect users without taking away their independence?
um you have an option to self-block and you have an option on there to report. Like if this person is not getting it or you're not responding to the person and the person still continues to kind of like message you, that user can report and say like, "Hey, I don't want this." And they can block it themselves. Maybe it's something like, you continue to tell me jokes about something that I didn't think was funny. So maybe, but it wasn't something that was really controversial. It's just you didn't think it was funny. You can block them yourself, and that person doesn't have to be kicked off the app.
Hmm. Now, what warning signs do you hope users learn to recognize?
Um, as someone who's moving far too fast. Like do not go and meet someone offline right away. Try to get to know them, and that's some of the things that also like little, safety things that we can do, just like with anything else. Get to know someone a little bit more. And if you're gonna meet them, which, go ahead and meet them. That's something you do want to do. Make sure that you're meeting them in public places. Similar to where you
Mhm.
would do that anywhere. If you're selling something online, selling a squishy, you better meet them in a public place just so that it's more visibility.
Now, how can families offer support without controlling someone's relationships?
I think that's difficult. I think that's really difficult, you know, autism or not. I think that a family knowing like, okay, they do have everybody's 18. So there's no one under 18 on the site.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah, so it's just meant for adults. I did not introduce it for teens or anything like that. And everybody does have a verified diagnosis and just kind of like asking the way that you would anyone without a diagnosis or not, what are some of the things you like about this person? And if they start saying some red flags for the family, then, then the family can say like, oh, why don't you try talking to someone else or so on. But I think that has less to do with autism and that has more to do with like, helping the person and the individual decide like what's right for them and what's not right for them.
Now, what responsibility does an app have when its users may be especially vulnerable?
What can you expand on that a little bit more?
Well,
I mean, the only thing I could do is that I have the pri I guess what I can do is just do my due diligence of making sure
mm,
that do my due diligence and making sure that we are verifying. And then
yeah,
if someone, okay, that's what you're asking. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Um, Making sure someone's like, if this does not look real, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, go ahead. You gave me something, or you gave me a picture of a smiley face, and you uploaded that as your documentation. I think that that would be more of it too.
yeah,
Just doing my due diligence if I'm looking at the documentation.
yeah. Now, many autistic people enter relationships while performing a version of themselves they believe will be accepted. Can real connection happen while someone is masking?
I think that all of us, regardless of a diagnosis or not, we all do a little masking in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that all of us do a little bit masking in the beginning. I think that once you start to get to know someone, as more you talk to them, and then you determine, regardless of a diagnosis or not, what is a deal breaker for you. And I think that um, it's not until you start getting to know someone and know someone how they really are that then you can say like, oh yes, this is a non-negotiable for me, or this is something like I can deal with. Like it's okay that, you didn't really love. I love my cat. She's my baby. That you really didn't love my cat as much as you said you did in the beginning. Like, it's okay. As long as you don't abuse her and you're not mean to her in front of me or behind my back, I'm good with it. So I think that I don't think anyone can really build a true connection of someone that's not being vulnerable, regardless of diagnosis or not.
Now, parents often want their autistic child to be protected, but that child may grow into an adult who wants friendship, love, intimacy, and independence. How do families navigate that transition?
That is the biggest hurdle. That's what I talked about in the
Yeah.
beginning, is sometimes where parents don't want to realize that their child has all of these things. There is a gentleman, his name's Dr. Shane Spiker, and he is huge on sex ed and teaching these type of things early on. When I'm working with my clients, and they are children, I'm telling parents right on, like, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable again, regardless of diagnosis or not. We gotta start teaching them about, their body and what's acceptable and different stuff like that. We need to understand that just because they have this diagnosis, they're gonna still go through all those different type of changes. I think that just kind of really honing down, and it's not comfortable for anyone, if you were to leave tomorrow, what would life look like for your child? And if you want them to be as independent as possible, then we need to continue to try to strive for them for independence. So I think that that is the way that I handle it. Just
Mm.
really reflection and be like, what is it going to look like in 10 years? Like, hey, if you don't teach, this person that they cannot talk to underage people, this is going to be difficult when they turn 18, and so on. So that's how I have continued to navigate it, is just being very black and white with it.
Now, how can families talk about relationships without creating shame?
When a family has multiple kids and maybe some kids without the diagnosis, I feel like it's easier to get through to them because I feel like sometimes I could tell them, okay, if you had expectations for this one child, you need to have the same expectations of this other child. And
Hmm.
so we need to be on the same playing field as far as what we're teaching them. Um, I also bring it back to safety. we need to teach them about their body so that then it needs to be non-shameful so that if something were to happen,
Mhm.
they're going to be able to report to you that something happened because there's no shame associated with it. If we bring shame with it, then they're going to be less likely to report when something bad happens.
Mm. Now, what have you seen happen with an autistic person finally find someone who genuinely understands them?
I've seen where someone that they have just like anyone else, they have relationships, they can go on and have children, they can have go on and have functional lives. You know, maybe I go back to the first the job that I had when I was 19 as a residential caregiver. There were families and I mean there were people in there that were married and they lived in a residential setting, but they were married. And it was just like, a house and they would have a caregiver come over and help them with the little things, but they had their own thing.
Mm.
They were married, they had their own room and so on. So it is possible, you know.
Have you witnessed a connection that reminded you exactly why you created the app?
I have not witnessed a connection yet. I have not witnessed a connection yet. It's so new that I haven't yet. And that's what I'm praying for.
All right. When you look ahead, what do you hope this app becomes?
I mentioned it a little bit. I want it to be all-encompassing. I want people to be able to, there's so many, like I said in the beginning, there's so many different apps out there, like, Catholics Unite, or there's like Christian Mingle or whatever. What I want is I want something like that. I want something where someone knows we're kind of on the same playing field. I would want it to also like, hey, you know what, we have the social skill component, what I'm already doing. And I think towards towards later on in the future, having the counseling function on there, because there is a high correlation with autism and having like depression, anxiety, all of those things. And I want someone to be able to address those issues with them.
Do you imagine,
That's what I would want. I'm
do you
sorry?
imagine, do you imagine it growing beyond current purpose?
Yeah, yeah, I would want that.
What would you like other developers and professionals to learn from what you have created?
I think we tend to think of functional in terms of clinical setting.
Hmm.
What's functional for the individual? Clinical setting, clinical setting, clinical setting. Yes, you can do all this, you could do all that, you could do that. And I don't think that we address enough about the whole connection. And I want someone to understand that I don't think enough of us understand, parents, educators, anyone else, that
Hmm.
this diagnosis is one part of the individual. It's not the whole individual. And they still, just like anyone else, wants to, if they wanted to, not everyone wants connection, right? But they can have a couple friends, that's fine. But if they want that, we should not limit them. We should not limit them to say like, oh, well, they're going to live at home with mom and dad until they're, 40. And then when mom and dad get too old to live with them, then, their older sister or older brother now will be responsible for them. It's not fair. It's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the individual. It's not fair to these siblings. It's not fair. So that is the whole goal, is for people to understand that they have all the same needs as us.
Now, for the autistic person listening who wants connection but has experienced rejection, misunderstanding, or loneliness, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know. I'm gonna end it with like the one gentleman that I serve. He had told me something, and he's like, "Well, it's because I wish my brain wasn't like that. I'm just dumb." And I'm like, who told you that? And he's like, well, because you said that I have like intellectual disability and I'm slower. I'm like, I said that you had an intellectual disability and it may take you a little bit longer, but that does not mean that you're dumb. And I think that finding that takes time, regardless of any type of diagnosis or not. So I would want the individual learner to, I mean, I would want the person with autism to know, like, it's okay, this person was not your person. It's not meant to be. Keep on trying. Let's try again. Let's find someone. And maybe let's not put such an emphasis on finding someone and maybe just finding someone that is cool that you could hang out with and it develops into something else.
Mm. How can they begin without feeling they must change who they are?
Being honest. Being
Mm.
honest. I think being honest in the beginning is the best policy for anything. Yes, like we go back to, everyone masks a little bit, regardless of any type of diagnosis. But I think that truly being genuine, like this is who I am, um,
Mhm.
I think that that's just like the best policy with anything. So that you're not thrown off and then you don't meet someone that you thought was someone else and they don't meet someone that was someone else. Of course, a few little things like that. When you meet someone, you're trying to impress them. So you maybe may act like a little bit nicer than what you typically are, but for the most part, I think that honesty is always going to be the thing that really gets you ahead of time.
And what does finding the right person begin with?
Friendship.
So true.
Friendship. Yeah. Being able to share something with someone that you both guys have a common interest or like and being friends with someone.
And finally, how can people learn more about you and the app?
They can check out our website, capablehearts.com. It's also available on download on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. They can send me an email, Trista@capablehearts.com. I answer all my emails. I look at them. That's the best way. So or we're on Instagram. I just created a TikTok. I feel like, oh, I'm lost because I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff, but we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, Capable Hearts, and we also are on TikTok.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Trista. I'm Reed Miles. Stay curious, stay fearless, and remember wherever you are, you're never alone. Thank you, Trista.
Thank you. Bye.